thank you to Ejad Labs and FutureFest team for bringing us all together here. My name is Aatif Awan. About 4 years ago, I started an early stage VC fund focused on Pakistani startups. It's called Indus Valley Capital. And since then, we have gone to invest in multiple startups, tens of millions of dollars across EdTech, logistics, e-commerce, fintech, many sectors. And we've seen some failures, but we've seen a tremendous grit and success as well in bringing Pakistan's economy online. Arzish, I think, had an amazing speech earlier, and he talked about the fundamentals of Pakistan. I'll build on that. And what I want to do in the next 5 minutes is persuade all of you that Pakistan has a prosperous future that will be built on top of technology and entrepreneurship. So to start with, a few months ago, Goldman Sachs released this very interesting report that people found hard to believe. And that report said that by 2075, so in 2 generations from now, Pakistan's GDP will be $12.7 trillion. It'll be the 6th largest economy in the world. And it would be a quarter of US's GDP at the time. Now that sounds really hard to believe, given where we are today and what we saw last couple of years. And today, US GDP is 70 times larger than Pakistan's. So really what they're claiming is, over the next 2 generations, relative to US, Pakistan's GDP will grow 18x. And that's incredible. And the reason it is not that hard to believe, and it's actually will happen and make sense, is to predict the future, you have to look at the history. You go back centuries of data on economies. Throughout most of the last 1,500 years, the 2 largest economies in the world have been China and the subcontinent, which is India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh put together. And the primary reason for that was these were the largest populations. And back then, the difference between individual productivity across country wasn't that big. So whoever had the largest population tended to have the largest economy. That changed with the industrialization. And the West, really started increasing the productivity way faster than the global South and the East. And as a result, we saw this massive gap that exists today. But with information technology, we've already seen that gap starting to close. Everybody can learn faster. China, we have seen, has closed that gap. India is on that trajectory. But what's amazing is that just some recent developments in tech actually are going to accelerate all of this way, way faster. So first, just looking at the population. So Pakistan is now 240, 250 million people. But just in 1 generation, by 2050, because we're so young, median age of 23, Pakistan will have as many people in 1 generation as in their labor force as all of EU combined by 2050. That's incredible. Like, look at all the European Union economies put together, and our labor force would be the same. And we will have 1/4 the number of old people to support. So Europe actually is looking at a big, big demographic disaster. And that's where you see all the immigration-related issues. And I think there's an opportunity to connect the economies where the youth from Pakistan and the global South can help actually Europe and Japan with these demographic issues. But that's from a working population perspective. But what's also happening is that the productivity as a result of generative AI, all of a sudden, a 5-year-old child sitting in a small town in Pakistan can have access to the best of knowledge in an interactive way in their own native language, whether it's Punjabi or Sindhi or Saraiki or Balochi, and they can learn on their own pace, and it doesn't cost much. In Pakistan, to teach today a child, even in government school, it's about $10 a month. And we don't have enough money to teach the 20 million kids that are out of school. But this will cost less than $2 a month. And because it's tech, that cost will only keep coming down. So this AI native generation, you already see that. I mean, folks like Arzish and, even much younger people in this audience, they're much more productive, smarter than we were, or our generation was, and which was more smarter than the prior generation. But the AI native generation that is going to grow up now, I think that will massively reduce that gap. They'll be connected with the global economy. So we will close that productivity gap. Now, I want to just touch on what are the biggest challenges that Pakistan faces. Productivity, I already covered. The other challenges are we have a fiscal deficit. So the government spends more than it earns. And we have a trade imbalance that leads to current account deficit. And how technology will actually help with, and artificial will help with both of those. So first of all, look at agriculture. Pakistan, even though we rank lowest on productivity per acre, we are still in the top 10 countries on most of the important crops in the world. But what's happening now is that startups like Farmar from our portfolio, they are building technology that can use satellite maps, that can use sensor data and machine learning to help farmers, to help corporate farmers increase their productivity. So that agri-productivity is going to go up, which helps the government earn more. It also helps us not avoid importing food, which we shouldn't, and as we increase the yield, we should be exporting food and earning precious foreign reserves. Startups like Maqsad in EdTech, they're already reaching 400,000 students a month and teaching them. So that increases that productivity. And as the economy comes online, what happens is most of the transactions get documented. The biggest problem the government has is that it doesn't know who to tax. That problem goes away, and we're already at a point where we are rapidly increasing. Just NayaPay and SadaPay, between them, have brought together more than 1.5 million digital wallets. The retailers are starting to adopt these technologies. Most of the B2B transactions will eventually happen online. And once that happens, government can increase its revenue, and that will solve a fundamental problem that Pakistan has. Then finally, the trade imbalance, right? So we don't export enough. And fundamentally, that has historical context. We haven't invested enough in manufacturing. And I think we should do that. But the thing that will really, really leapfrog is the technology exports. And we're already starting to see that scale up through software companies, through startups, but most importantly, through freelancers. And these freelancers, like the numbers Arzish was sharing of those 6,000 people bringing in 150 million, like imagine, just take that to 60,000. That's $1.5 billion. And if you look at what happened in India's story, in early 90s, India had, $1.5 billion in IT exports. They were going to IMF because of the same trade balance issues. They had 2 weeks of import cover. So very similar situation. And what got them through was that they grew those IT exports 100x to $150 billion over the next 25 years. They're still running deficits on the rest of the economy, but the tech more than pays for everything else, right? And we don't need to grow at 100x. We are at 3 to 4 billion. By the time you grow it to 20, 25, 30 billion, it starts to become a significant enough percentage of the economy where we get out of this cycle of running out of forex, leading to higher inflation, leading to economy going down. And we'll have that buffer the way India has to then build and invest in infrastructure, which we badly need to do. So putting all of that together, I don't think there is any other answer. The answer we have is right here in this room, in all towns and cities of Pakistan, young men and women working on technology, building their startups, freelancing. And if we continue to support them, I'm highly confident that Pakistan has a prosperous future that will be built on top of technology and entrepreneurship. Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience.